Hi, this is Hans from Request for Music, and this is a long overdue video for my VCF. And let's drag it in here. And I'm dragging it in between my 2 LFO, which is a 2 LFO setup where you have a couple of formulas that you can use to modulate stuff. I've got my 2 VCO, which is a module that contains 2 VCOs, 2 oscillators that can be detuned, and having glide and having a lot of other stuff in there, and my mixer, which was the latest input into the store, where you have an 8-channel stereo mixer. So let's hook things up. I'm going to take my output of the oscillator, I'm going into the filter, and I'm taking my gates of my the original source, of course, from V voltage modular, and I'm taking the output in, and that should be working if everything's okay. Okay, so I've got a very basic setup here at the moment. So let's see if it's loud enough, everything. So okay, so I've got a sawtooth, and the filter is being driven by the gate of my keyboard, and I've got the got 3 filters in there actually. So I've got my analog filter, I've got a saturated filter, and a biquad filter, as you can see, and each of those filters has an on-off switch and a color bar to show you that it is indeed on, and the color bar is sort of repeated here in between because every filter has its own settings, so it has its own values for the filters setting, and the biquad looks a bit different, and every one of those has its own envelope that you can set. So that makes it quite interesting to have 3 filters in one actually. So sorry. So first of all, the analog filter, got it set up, and it's only driving half of it, so the envelope obviously decides how much sound is going to go through, and the it's set at low, low, high, and low, and this would be the highest value for the sustain, because that's the attack decay sustain release of this filter. And let's switch this back to low and switch it off. Then I would have a very short. I've got this set to medium. If I wanted even shorter, I would drag this and do something like that. And obviously still got my depth in here and my resonance. So something like that. And if I wanted this to be on top of another filter, I could actually switch my saturated filter on by just switching it on there, and you see that the color bar is then shown. And the saturated filter has its own settings, so this now has the other filter working as well. And I could actually give that a different setting for my attack decay sustain release. So something like that. And let's change this a bit. And the nice thing is that you can actually, if you wanted to, you can take those outputs out apart. So this is only my analog output, so that's going to the mixer, and take the other one out. And since I can it is a stereo mixer, but I can give it a mono signal, as I do now, just on the left input, and I can pan both of those signals if I wanted to. It has the inputs here for CV, which I could do sort of amplitude modulation for this, or my panorama can be modulated. So first of all, I can just get one to the one side and the other to the other side a bit. as it should. Oh, geez. But I can modulate it by using those inputs, and those have their own sort of attenuators, or actually volume levels for that. So if I wanted to have the bottom one having its own modulation, I could drag that out of this, and that will now be modulated overall. So if I give this a long, this is saturated one, if I give it a long sustain and a long possibility to sound with something like that, that will pan. And I said you still have all of those channels separately from a mixed output if you want it. And obviously they all have their own level settings in there, except so that if you do the mix output, you still have the option to mix the value or mix the signal exactly as you see fit. So let's actually drag some delay in. I like the sound of that, so let's see where have I got that. The delay, here it is. I'll put it behind my mixer. So let's switch the library of, take these into my delay and take the output of my mixer into my delay. So everything will be delayed. So it's all at 100 setting, 100 milliseconds, and I'll change that a bit. So take both of them to mid settings where I have another kind of range, and dial my mix back a bit and give it more feedback. So let's change the analog setting as well again. So I'll do it a bit less deep and give it put it back to the center, and still have this one do. Give the analog a bit higher sustain values. And since I also have, except or apart from the envelope setting, I have my cutoff modulation and resonance modulation. So I could go into my saturated one and take maybe even the same kind of signal, but a triangle version of that. Take that out here into my cutoff modulation, and whilst in analog, and you can see that if I switch the settings, that you have indeed separate settings for all of those filters. So if I go into my saturated one, and I can see from the color that it's selected, so I can have this kind of effect now just going on, and it's at the buy setting now. Let's set it to just a positive setting, so it's just adding to it. So, and of course, the deeper I set it, so the saturated filter is being modulated by the other. Let's switch off the analog one. So this is only saturated filter, and switch this off and just take the analog filter. Give it more resonance. Let's take the sustain out and just do it by using something like that. And apart from that, I also have a biquad filter in there, which you can switch the type of by using this type dial here. So let's take a bandpass first. Let's switch the other ones off. And let's take it out to my filter as well. Everything off. Okay. Bandpass. Cutoff. Resonance. Level. Switch to one of the others. Let's go to a low pass filter first. So obviously it has the same kind of characteristics as the analog, slightly different, but for the rest, this obviously works the same, so you still have and as said, you can combine that, so if I put my analog on as well and my saturated, and let's use the functionality of the mixer as well. So I'm going to take my pan and modulate that from the other oscillator. So change that to a different setting. And actually it might be best if I do a shift click on these. I set it to synced values. So if I dial this up to 1 bar, for instance, and the other one to 1/4 bar, they'll do different pans for both to get extra depth in the sound. Give it a bit less resonance here. Let's change the other ones. So in the biquad, have it set at low pass at the moment. If I want another kind of notch filter, let's give slightly less delay. And the other sound that you hear now is obviously the pan. So let's take the pan off. Use the cutoff modulation to change the notch. Add the saturated filter to it. Maybe switch that to a high pass filter. It's all about adding sort of layers of sounds to your signal. Dial the mixer back a bit. And the VCO itself has the option to do a glide on one oscillator. So especially for longer sounds, that can be quite nice. And in combination with all of those pen stuff that I work on. And actually the oscillator itself can get deeper because of the multiplier that works on the D2. So if you want to, you can actually add an octave below as I've just done. So this is just the analog filter at the moment. Just the saturated filter for the band pass. Switch to the high pass. And actually, if you wanted to, you could also modulate the resonance of this. So if I let's take the mix of the delay out. So, well, you hear that there's all kinds of sounds that can be made, and this was all in the parallel mode, because there's also a serial in mode in which all of the filters are combined, and actually then I would normally then obviously use the mixed output, because then all of those filters work together, and overall level can go back. Um, and let's put this in the center, give it some extra level. So first of all, let's use my analog filter. This now goes straight in. There's no serial work, whatever, done. But if I switch my saturated filter on, it's going through the saturated filter as well. So this filters the original signal in a saturated way before going out. So if I or I could have the other filter do that kind of a sound. So first of all, let's switch my. So this where it's going from. Let's take this initial jeez. So I got a sound like this, where the other one then could filter the other part. As you can hear, you can still hear that part slightly. But if I now... Oh, sorry. One. And everything could go through the low pass filter or a band or a notch filter if you wanted to afterwards. And apart from that, this is the mixed signal, but you can always take just your analog signal. Because looking at this, let's mute this one. This is my original analog signal that I can shape in my mixer by giving it a different level and using the panorama modulation and stuff like that. Below the other sound. And obviously I still have my saturated filter as well. So yeah, well, I hope that gives you an idea of what the VCF can do, and especially in combination with any mixer, because you have all of those outputs available. Of course, I created the mix for this kind of option because I wanted to be able to use panorama on panorama modulation, and I could even do the CV modulation if I wanted to. So if I have this, I can still use, yeah, I could actually use an envelope or whatever, or just modulate. So now it's modulating this analog output that it's getting from the analog output here, and using the LFO to modulate that. Well, again, I hope that gives you enough information about the VCF, how it's capable of using 3 filters, an analog, a saturated, and a biquad filter, that you can see that they're all switched on at the moment. As soon as you switch it off, that line is gone. If you just want the saturated filter and you just want it in parallel, as soon as the other filter is off, because in serial it normally is a combination of filters, so since this is closed, signal is not going through into the saturated filter, because they are in serial in this order: analog, then saturated, then biquad. So as soon as I switch my analog filter off, it gets all of the signal. That's why you hear sound now. So, and then it could be either in serial or in parallel. That wouldn't. So yeah, well, again, I hope that let's mute this. Again, I hope that gives you some more information on what you can do with the VCF, and especially, of course, in combination with some other RFM modules like here. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you don't have it yet, get the demo and see if it can do something for you. Cheers. Bye-bye.